All right, let's talk about cybersecurity compliance. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Rules, regulations, audits, it all sounds like a massive chore, right? But I want you to look at it a different way. Think of compliance as the official rulebook for our digital world. It's actually the very foundation of trust that makes our connected lives even possible. So let's dive in. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. We are living through an absolute explosion of data. Every single click, every purchase, every connection we make, it all generates information. Now, this has been amazing for business and for innovation, but it also creates this huge responsibility. I mean, how do we protect all of it? Well, that's where the rules come in. Without a clear, enforceable set of rules, trust just evaporates. And when trust is gone, so is business. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the why, the whole data dilemma that makes this stuff so necessary in the first place. Then we'll decode the different kinds of rules that are out there. From there, we'll look at how companies pull it all together with a strategy called GRC, check out some real-world frameworks they use, and wrap up by asking a really important question. Is compliance just about checking a box, or is it about building a culture? Okay, so let's kick things off by setting the stage. Why has compliance suddenly become such a hot topic in boardrooms and IT departments all over the world? Well, it all boils down to this digital data dilemma. What's so interesting here is that this is really a perfect storm. Technology has made businesses incredibly efficient. You have systems that can talk to each other, swapping massive amounts of data in the blink of an eye. At the exact same time, it's become crazy cheap to store all of that data. So what's the result? Companies are now sitting on these literal mountains of incredibly valuable, sensitive information. We're talking intellectual property, trade secrets, and of course, all of our personal data. This combination of high value and high vulnerability makes them massive targets. And suddenly, protecting that data isn't just a nice idea, it's an absolute must. So we know we need rules, but here's the thing. Compliance isn't just one monolithic thing. It's actually a super complex landscape of different requirements coming from all sorts of places. Let's try and decode these rules of the road. First things first, let's get a solid definition down. At its very core, compliance is just the process of making sure you're playing by the rules. And those rules can be internal, like your own company's security policies, or they can be external, like government laws or industry-wide standards. It's all about making sure your actions line up with what's expected. And this really shows you just how complex it is. The rules a company has to follow can come from anywhere. First up, you've got foundational legal systems that shape a country's laws. Then there's something called customary law, which is basically the unwritten best practices of an industry. It's just what's expected. Think of it like this. There might not be a specific law that says a bank has to have fraud detection, but if they don't and something bad happens, they're still seen as irresponsible. On top of that, you've got administrative laws from agencies. Think GDPR in Europe or HIPAA for healthcare in the US. And finally, you have very specific industry standards, like PCI DSS for anyone handling credit cards. It's a real web of obligations. So with all these rules flying at you from every direction, how on earth does an organization even begin to manage it all without going completely nuts? Well, they do it by building a cohesive strategy. Let's look at how that works with an approach called GRC. GRC stands for governance, risk management, and compliance. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like you're building a house. Governance, that's your blueprint. It sets out who makes the big decisions and who's responsible for what. Risk management, that's your inspector, who's constantly walking the site looking for threats and weak spots, like a bad foundation or some dodgy wiring. And compliance, that's the building code. It makes sure everything you do is up to snuff and meets all the required laws and standards. For a strong house, you absolutely need all three working together. And this right here is the crucial part. You can't treat these three pillars like they're in separate silos. When governance, risk, and compliance are all integrated, they feed into each other. Your risk analysis helps shape your governance decisions, and your compliance needs influence how you manage risk. Trying to do them separately is just inefficient, and frankly, it leaves huge, dangerous gaps in your security. Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, but how do organizations actually do GRC in the real world? They use established frameworks. These are basically practical toolkits that give them a structured path to follow. Let's take a look at a few of the big ones. First up, let's head down under to the Australian Government Information Security Manual, or the ISM. This was developed by the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and it gives organizations a fantastic framework for managing cyber threats. It's not a law, but it is powerful guidance that's based on some really deep government expertise. And what's so great about the ISM is just how practical it is. Take their Essential 8. This isn't some high-level, abstract theory. It's a prioritized, actionable list of controls that give you the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to stopping attacks. We're talking about things like patching your applications, using multi-factor authentication, and doing daily backups. This is where the rubber really meets the road. Now let's hop over to the United States and talk about NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is a hugely influential agency. They work hand in hand with industry to develop security and technology standards that are used by governments and private companies all over the world. One of NIST's most famous contributions is the Risk Management Framework, or RMF. Now, the first thing you should notice about this diagram is that it's a circle, and that is completely on purpose. This is not a one-and-done checklist. It's a continuous, cyclical process. The whole goal is to weave security and privacy into a system's entire life cycle, from the day it's conceived to the day it's retired. And here are the steps in that cycle. It all starts with preparing the organization. Then you categorize your systems to figure out how critical they are. Based on that, you select and implement the right controls. Then you have to assess them to make sure they're actually working. After that, you authorize the system for use, making a decision based on the risk you're willing to accept. And then, this is the most critical part, you monitor it constantly, which feeds right back into the beginning of the cycle. It's a living, breathing process. And finally, let's touch on a truly international standard, the ISO 27000 series. This is a globally recognized benchmark for information security. Now, it's really important to understand the two main parts. ISO 27001 is the what. It lays out the requirements for creating an information security management system, or ISMS. This is the standard that companies get certified against. Then you have ISO 27002, which is the how. It's a massive catalog of specific security controls that you can pick and choose from to build out your system. So we've covered the why, the what, and the how. We've looked at the rules and the frameworks that bring them to life. But all of this brings us to what is maybe the most important question of all. What is the actual goal here? And this slide just lays out the critical contrast perfectly. An organization can approach all of this with a checkbox mentality, where they're doing the absolute bare minimum, just enough to pass the next audit. It's where security is seen as some IT problem. Or they can build a genuine culture of security, where protecting data is baked into every single business process, and everyone, from the CEO to the intern, understands that it's their responsibility. One approach gets you a piece of paper, the other gets you real security. And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. All of these frameworks, all of these rules, they're just tools. And you can use those tools to simply check a box, or you can use them to build something strong and lasting. So you have to ask, is the ultimate goal just to pass the test, or is it to build an organization that is fundamentally secure and resilient from the inside out? Thanks for watching.